To begin your evidence in action workbook, the first thing you want to do is insert your name, tab over to your last name, hit enter, and you'll be logged in. You'll hear the ding, the ring tone. Up in the upper right you will see a lit up circle. Just click on it. It'll take you to which type of investigation you're going to work on. The first time in, you're going to work on the domestic violence. Just click on it. You'll select phase 1, the preliminary investigation. The alert you just heard indicates you have a message on your mobile data terminal. Click the icon that will be flashing down here in the far left. Open it. The purpose is to be taking notes as you're going along, as you will be making a full police report based on our 3-part format when you're complete. So now you have just heard the unit number and where you're going. So you can use a date that you're comfortable with. Use yesterday's date. Whatever time you're watching this, use yesterday's date. It'll give you a time. And now to click out of this, go back up to the circle in the top right, and you'll see it flash in the bottom right saying next. This is the way you'll be stepping through this whole program. After reviewing the dispatch on your MDT, you must take some action. Your next step, give it a single click, read the choices, take a call that's been holding for some time, respond to the call as quickly as possible, check your tactical equipment before responding to the call. You may need it when you arrive at the scene, or call for another unit to assist you with the call. Out of these, you have to pick one. If you pick the wrong one, you'll get a beep tone that's sort of muted, or you'll get a nice ringtone if you're correct, plus it'll turn green. So here, considering the victim may be in danger, this call takes precedence over a loud noise call, so you proceed. So the next thing you would do, you click to move ahead, you respond to dispatch acknowledging the call, that you will have an estimated time of arrival in 10 minutes. You scan the map, you find out where it's at, and you're responding. It is now 14:20 hours. So that'll be your response time. When you're en route to the residence, you call up the history of that residence at 114 Elm, and you find out prior contact noted at this location 3 domestic disturbances within the last 6 months, 1 in the last week. Your next step would be click, pick your choices, proceed to the call as quickly as possible, obeying traffic laws, immediately call for all squads in the area, switch to a secure channel and advise other units to check on the other call that you weren't going to, or run all stop signs and red lights to get there as quick as you can. Since this is a typical domestic, you were not told that it's violent. You're told it's a typical husband-wife arguing type of call. You would want to get there as quick as you can, but obeying traffic laws. You can read this. They usually explain why you picked the right or wrong answer. It gives you a brief explanation of why you're responding. It's a sunny afternoon. A lot of people are out washing their cars. They look at you as you drive by. You notice the houses are pretty nice in that neighborhood. but you do see one vehicle in the driveway of 114 Elm, a navy blue 1999 Toyota Camry. The house is dark red brick, bay windows, beige trim, front door wooden with a floral decoration is ajar. Out of that, for your note taking, the important elements so far would be that there is a navy blue Toyota Camry. Give it a license number and the state. The fact that it's a dark red brick home isn't important, but the fact that the door is ajar, meaning slightly open, is important. So you would want to note those two on your note sheet. Also, the third thing that's important on there is the time that you did arrive, 1427 hours. You and your partner notified dispatcher your 1097. Now you wouldn't use 1097 on your report because it's code, but on your report you would put it. You arrived at 1427 hours. Now what do? You park behind the Camry to block them in, you park one house down along the curb, or do you pull into the driveway beside the Camry but do not turn your engine off? Out of these, the typical tactic for police responding to a domestic is to park one house down along the curb. But just for the sake of hearing what happens when you pick the wrong answer, let's say you want to select pull into the driveway beside the Camry. Yeah, you hear that little thunk and it's purple. This is incorrect. You must think tactically. So let's say you pick this. Now you must think strategically. Park one house down to allow for a safe approach to the house on foot without alerting the suspect. You can also listen for noises, arguing, things that would emphasize the seriousness of the situation. So you park your vehicle along the curb, one house away from the residence in question. Up ahead, near the residence, a distraught female neighbor approaches. You exit your vehicle and make contact with a neighbor in the yard. She tells you her name is Martha Goodson. She's the one who called the police. You write Martha Goodson on your notepad and get her name, address, and phone number. Miss Goodson explains that she has been hearing shouting and the sound of broken glass from inside the residence. You ask if the people arguing are still in the house, and she says that she thinks so. She has not seen anyone leave. She says that the Whitworths are a young couple and argue quite often, and the police have been out there before. She does not know any specifics about the previous police calls. You advise her to wait at her residence, and you will return to get further information from her if necessary. You proceed on foot to the Whitworth house to investigate. You can click domestic calls are dangerous, but we will take that as a given. Your next step. Do you run up to the front door, yell inside to see if anybody answers? Do you cautiously approach the front of the residence, limiting your exposure to potential threats from within through windows and doors? Approach the front door and announce your presence by shouting police loudly enough for people inside to hear you. Or do you have the dispatcher call them and tell them to come out? Well, I think anything that says do it cautiously is probably the correct answer. Domestic disturbances can become quite violent, and responding officer can easily become the target of the aggressor. The element of surprise also allows you to better assess the situation and dangers involved. Here's a picture of the husband, Mark Whitworth. Once you approach the door, you and your partner position yourself on either side of the door and listen for a few moments. You hear a heated argument coming from inside between a man and a woman, but no sounds that would indicate a violent assault taking place. You knock loudly on the door, which is answered by a white male, approximately 6 foot, short blonde hair. He asks in an angry voice what you want. You notice he is sweating and has a red face, smells of alcohol. Behind him you can see a white female, approximately 5'5", long curly red hair, standing with her arms crossed in a defiant expression. You identify yourself and explain that you are investigating a report of a disturbance and ask the man and woman if you might speak with them. The man grudgingly invites you and your partner inside. So what's important off of this particular notations are that you hear an argument, but nothing violent. You get a good description of the people involved, especially the sweating, the red face, smelling of alcohol, description of the female, and then very importantly is that they invite you in case there's any question later as to how you entered their house. So when you go in, what do? You have both parties sit on the couch and explain their side of the story one at a time? Do you ask to speak with the man and woman separately so that you can hear both sides of the conflict without influence and interference? Take the wife out on the front porch while your partner stays behind to speak to the husband, or issue both parties citation for disturbing the peace. So obviously the fourth one is wrong. Having them sit side by side on the couch probably wouldn't work. They ask to speak to the man and woman separately, and just as a heads up, if you do this in real life, you would talk to them separately, but you would keep them within sight of each other so that you can back up your partner, give him some support if he needs it. So you would not take one out of the area like it shows here. So you don't seclude yourself completely from your partner. Attempt to position yourself so that you and your partner can still communicate visually or verbally. So here it shows the husband on one side of the kitchen. You speak with the man you identify as Mark Whitworth. You ask him what happened. So here's what he tells you. Pretty quick, wasn't it? But that's the way it happens in real life. People tell you things and then they want to move on. So you need to be able to take notes quickly. But for our purpose, I will show it to you one more time. Okay, your partner goes in the other room to talk to Mrs. Whitworth. So you ask him what happened. Okay, that's a good question. Are you or aren't you? That's always the trouble that faces police officers when they approach scenes like this. Not exactly sure. So let's hear what she has to say again, then make up your mind. Okay, the next thing you would do then, do you arrest the husband for public intox? Do you arrest the husband for vandalism? Or do you counsel both parties and attempt to mediate a solution that will be in the best interest of both without taking any enforcement action? Obviously, you're asked to do a lot as a police officer. You have a lot of discretion at your hand. So you would obviously want to counsel them. While the potential is there, no violation law has taken place with this incident. Providing both parties with good advice, perhaps encouraging one of them to stay elsewhere until tempers subside, and making sure they are aware of the consequences of criminal offenses related to domestic violence is all that can be done. the wife should be made aware of services available to victims of abuse. So what you would do, you would talk to both of them, figure out what they want to do. Since there's no violation of law, nothing you can act on, you attempt to mediate a solution between Mr. and Mrs. Whitworth. Mr. Whitworth agrees to go to bed and sleep it off, while Mrs. Whitworth agrees to go to her mother's house for the remainder of the afternoon. She says she has to pick up their 6-year-old daughter Kayla anyway, who is spending the day with her grandmother. Mrs. Whitworth leaves at the same time you do, and you watch her drive away in her blue Toyota Camry. You document the details of this call and its resolution on your worksheet, including the names of persons involved and the contact numbers. This was the easiest solution for this. He agreed to go to sleep it off. She agreed to go to her mother's. Now remember, when you're writing the report, that you will use those words, that they agreed to do it, that you didn't ask them to do it, they agreed. You didn't force them to do anything. It was their idea, so it was a peaceful solution to that problem. So you go back to work, again keeping your timeline straight. You went there at 14:20, arrived at 14:30, and then whatever time you think it took to complete the other action of mediating the dispute. Now you're back to work. You begin answering other calls in your district until you've cleared for your dinner break at 6:30 p.m. A little hint, we are now talking military time. Military time would be 12 plus 6, that's 18:30 since it's p.m. You and your partner call out of service, pick up burgers from a local drive-thru, and park near the playground in City Park on your beat, and you heard the MDT call come in. So you got that? You're now requested back at 114 Elm. So in your report you will put on the same date at 18:30 hours, we were again dispatched to 114 Elm Street on the report of a violent domestic. You recognize this as the Whitworth residence from your call earlier in the day, and you volunteered to be en route to that call. This is Unit 501. It will be 1017 to 114 Elm Street, 10:26, 5 minutes. Again, that is code. You won't be using that in your report. You'll state that you got the call at 18:30. You were dispatched and you arrived at whatever time you think is appropriate. So, what do you do next? Do you proceed to the call without activating lights and sirens because this will alert the suspect? Request that EMS be dispatched because you feel someone may be hurt? Respond to 114 Elm Code 3 utilizing lights and sirens? Or do the second and third steps because they're both appropriate? Well, EMS won't respond until you have secured the scene, so even though you may think they are necessary, they'll be on alert. But what you would want to do is respond Code 3 utilizing lights and sirens. Priority 1 involves an immediate threat to someone's life, and Code 3 response is justified. While this response allows an officer to proceed through intersections and against traffic signals, extreme caution should be practiced to avoid accidents. You can't help anyone if you don't arrive safely. As you approach Elm Street, you remember the Whitworths own a blue Toyota Camry. So you and your partner keep an extra eye out for that car in case the suspect tries to leave the scene in it. You pull onto Elm Street. You observe several neighbors standing in their yard looking toward the Whitworth home. As you approach the Whitworth home, you again park one house away and are met at the curb by Ms. Goodson. You see that the front door of the house is open, but you don't see anyone on or around the porch. You notice the blue Camry is not in the driveway. Your next step, immediately rush up to the Whitworth residence to investigate. Have your partner watch the Whitworth residence while you quickly interview Ms. Goodson for additional information. Call for additional units to assist you. The appropriate one would be to have your partner watch while you ask Ms. Goodson for a couple bits of new information, because since she's an eyewitness, she could provide you with valuable information regarding suspects, weapons involved, and other pertinent details. This information should be obtained quickly and questions made brief. Information like this can be obtained in a matter of seconds and could save a life, including your own. You see the officer talk to Ms. Goodson. She says, "I'm so glad you're here. Mark was hitting Jana right out on the front porch. I think she was trying to get away from him, but tried to run out the front door." "Is Miss Whitworth still in the residence?" "No, he just left right before you got here." "Did he happen to drive off in the blue Toyota Camry?" "Yes, that's the only car they have. He won't let her have one." "Do you know if he had a weapon?" "I'm not sure," she responds, "but I saw Jana was bleeding pretty badly and she crawled back into the house. By that time I had already called you. I called right when I heard yelling and screaming. It sounded like it was pretty bad this time." So your next step, continue to interview her. Request that she fill out a written statement form. Draw your weapon and approach the house using cover from trees and bushes. Immediately put out a broadcast over the radio that the suspect has left the scene, and include a description and his description and a description of the blue Toyota Camry. In this case, doing this, you're requesting additional officers begin looking for that vehicle. Provides one more opportunity for the suspect to be located in the shortest amount of time. This is considered putting out a BOLO, B-O-L-O, all capital letters, no periods between them. It's just meaning be on the lookout would be the proper way to describe this. You put a BOLO out on the suspect and his vehicle. As you approach the front of the residence, you see that the flower pot has been knocked over and what appears to be a large amount of blood on the concrete porch in front of the door. A blood trail appears to lead into the residence out of your view. You tell the dispatcher to limit radio traffic to emergency transmissions only. You position yourself on the porch so that you can safely cover the front door. You can see in plain view, just inside the open door, a silver candlestick covered with blood lying on the floor. So again, with plain view and given the word from the witness, you have every right to enter this house without a warrant. So what do? Do you draw your weapon, identify yourself as the police, and order anyone inside to come out with their hands up? Yell police, slowly enter the residence, call for additional assist officers to secure the premises before entering, proceed to the rear of the residence to gain entry so as to surprise the suspect. There's different thoughts on this. Here you can draw your weapon, identify yourself as the police, order anyone to come out, or number two would have been correct in my experience, that you announce yourselves as the police, slowly enter the residence. Either one would be appropriate. No one responds to your commands, so you carefully enter the residence. Your weapon is trained in the direction of potential threats as you proceed room to room, clearing each of any threats to you and your partner. As you move from the living room into the kitchen, you find Mrs. Whitworth laying on her right side, bleeding profusely from a gash on her scalp. You note that the officer is taking her pulse, not moving her, as you don't know what the extent of her injuries are. He's checking her pulse. Then your next step would be Immediately request a dispatcher send an ambulance to your location, assist the victim, tell your partner to clear the rest of the house. Yell, police, come out with your hands up. Perform a cursory sweep of the residence to find the suspect and give him a good beating for what he did to this woman. Advise your partner to retrieve first aid kit from the patrol vehicle. So the only one that actually makes any sense is that you request a dispatcher send an ambulance to the location, assist the victim, and tell your partner to clear the rest of the house. The victim appears to be in very serious condition. She is your priority at this point. Since there's two of you, one would stay with her after you've called the ambulance. Make sure on your report you note the time you called the ambulance, what time they arrived, what type of unit it was, what agency sent the EMS. If you know the names of the EMS paramedics or EMTs, note their names, but at least note the times when you called when they arrived. As additional units arrive on the scene, you have them secure the crime scene and gather any additional witnesses for you to interview while medical personnel are attending to Mrs. Whitworth. Your partner has located Mrs. Whitworth's daughter, Kayla, hiding in her bedroom closet. Mr. Whitworth and the blue Camry were not located. One thing you would want to add to the sentence where your partner has located Mrs. Whitworth's daughter hiding in her bedroom closet, you may want to separate that with a little comma saying unharmed. It would be nice to know the condition of the little girl. What do you do next? You interview the daughter and any witnesses and Mrs. Whitworth if she is capable to obtain the details necessary to complete your report. Clear the scene. All that you can do has been done to this point. Obviously not. Begin looking for forensic clues such as hair fibers and fingerprints. It's not your job. Leave the scene to track down the Mark Whitworth in the blue Toyota Camry. Obviously that is not what you would want to do next. So the first part, the actual criminal episode is over and the investigation must begin. Interviews should identify the elements of the offense and the involvement of all parties at the scene. The proper investigative units, such as CSIs, should be notified, and any leads on the whereabouts of suspects should be followed up on. You have completed all of your interviews and identified how their information contributes to the investigation. You have identified the proper elements of the offense of aggravated assault, family violence. You have provided the victim, Mrs. Whitworth, with all the proper and required information pertaining to resources for the victims of family violence, and assisted her with contacting family members to care for daughter Kayla until her injuries are tended to. You and your partner now get back in your patrol unit and return to the station. One bit of information here where it says you assisted her with contacting family members. It's very important that we know the final disposition of the little girl, and since the mother is going to the hospital because of her head injury, you'll want to note on your report that at whatever time you contacted whoever, and I would suggest just use her mother, that you would contact the mother, give her a name, not the same name as Whitworth, because the mother's name would be in her maiden name, so use a name different from Whitworth, that you contacted her, give us an address and give us a phone number for the person when they got there. And the easiest way to note that is to say that Mrs. So-and-so arrived at whatever time and took custody of Kayla. That'll resolve that part of it, and that the investigators, other investigators were notified, arrived on scene. You briefed them on the case, and you went back to patrol. Okay, your next steps: stand around a resident until everyone is cleared out. No. Go to the nearest coffee shop for a quick break. No. Complete the initial offense report with this incident, detailing the information provided for follow-up investigation and case preparation for a detective. Correct. The detective now becomes responsible for this investigation and the building and filing of a case with the district attorney's office. You have provided the foundation for the case, giving all the particular names of everyone involved, addresses, phone numbers, the elements to the offense of aggravated assault, who the suspect is, what the injuries are, what weapons were used, and provided the detectives with enough information that they can now follow up and file a case with a district attorney. Here's a sample of an offense report, which we don't have. I'm not too concerned about that. What I'm more concerned with is that you write the narrative to the report, starting with day of the week, date, time, in military time, that you as a responding officer were dispatched to 114 Elm on the report of a domestic. Start from there. It's just one report, even though there are two incidents that happen. Make it just one report. If you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me at my email, grumba.mike@pti.edu. You can call me, 412-251-1802. If you need to review it, just you can replay this at your leisure.